Critics think the Christian position on pride is about power and control. And honestly, looking at some Christians, you can see why they think that. There's a version of the Christian response to pride that loves the word abomination, that shows up at funerals with signs that say God hates you, that screams burn in hell at people in parades. That version exists. It's a minority, but it's loud. And it handed critics a caricature that's easy to swing at. The church has a track record on this it needs to reckon with. Some of the people who claimed to speak for God made it very hard for anyone to hear what God was actually saying. But here's what doesn't get said enough. The sexual freedom movement has a track record too. It goes back to the 1960s. Free love, the pill, the deliberate severing of sex from commitment and procreation, no-fault divorce. Each step came with a promise: liberation, authenticity, freedom from outdated moral constraints. And each step was sold as progress toward a more humane society. So let's check the fruit. We have gender ideology being taught to children who are too young to spell their names. We have states that have threatened parents with losing custody of their kids for not affirming a gender transition. We have teenage girls being put on puberty blockers and having healthy body parts removed. And when countries like Sweden, Finland, and the United Kingdom actually looked at the evidence for these interventions, they reversed course. The Cass Review, commissioned by the National Health Service in the UK, found the evidence base for pediatric gender medicine was not there. These were not right-wing think tanks. These were the medical establishments of progressive countries saying, wait. And then there's the mental health data. The population this movement claimed to be liberating is not thriving. Anxiety and depression are not going down. They're going up dramatically. When you tell children the body they were born in might be wrong, that their biological sex is a costume, that their parents might not be safe people to talk to, and then act surprised when those children are struggling, something is being missed, badly. When you start coming for people's kids, they get angry. This is not bigotry. This is parenthood. So what is the actual Christian position? Not the funeral protests, not the abomination crowd, not the people who made it so hard to hear God that nobody could hear what he was saying. That was never the Christian position. That was people using God's name to express their own disgust and calling it theology. Here's the actual thing. There is a design for human beings, for bodies, for marriage, for family, not a list of rules invented by people who wanted power over other people, a design built into the architecture of reality itself by the God who made it and made us. The conviction that departing from that design costs something real was never hatred. It was a warning that got called bigotry for 60 years. And the culture that spent 60 years calling that warning hatred is now watching the bill come due in schools, in clinics, in the mental health of the very children the movement said it was protecting. Now, here's where it gets good. Before the sexual revolution, before the 1960s, before no-fault divorce and gender ideology and pediatric clinics and state laws threatening parents, before any of the first dominoes fell in any direction, God saw exactly where it was all going. Every departure from the design, every broken family, every confused child, every hateful sign at a funeral, every wound on both sides of this entire conversation. And he moved first. Not with a protest, not with a sign, not with a political movement or a culture war strategy, with himself. He stepped into the wreckage before that wreckage existed, took on flesh, and went to a cross. The lamb that was slain before the foundations of the earth. That's not a metaphor. That's the claim. Before any of this started, God had already written the check, signed it in his own blood, and slid it across the table to every person who would ever stand in the middle of this mess on either side of it, and said, "This one's on me." The bill that the sexual revolution is coming to do right now, paid. The bill for every hateful sign and every funeral protest and every time someone screamed abomination at a person God died for, paid. The bill for every one of us who has departed from the design in ways that never made the news, paid. That's not a power move. That's not control. That's the most expensive gift in the history of everything, freely offered to anyone who will take it. The refusal to celebrate sin was never hatred. It was a signpost. And for the believer, every action and every abstinence becomes exactly that, a sign pointing to the one who paid the bill before the bill existed. That's what this is. That's what it has always been. Making a big deal about Jesus, because Jesus is a big deal.